Hi everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon in the US. I'm with the US Forest Service. Much of the restoration work we do here in the US is regulatory driven, in addition to trying to do the right thing. But Department of Environmental Quality, Army Corps of Engineers, etc. All have regulations that we have to follow. And so I'm going to talk about some of the ways that native plant revegetation can meet both of the needs. My unit came about in the late 1990s when the Federal Highway Administration recognized that they were really struggling with the revegetation of their projects. There's a joke that they're good at making things flat, black, and hard, but not great at making things grow. They don't have the time and budget for monitoring. They lacked experience. They were realizing that they were losing credibility with regulatory agencies and land managers. So they approached the Forest Service and asked if we thought we could do it, and we said, absolutely, we'll do this. Since then, they've been decoupling the revegetation contract from the construction contract, and my unit, Restoration Services Team, we call it RST, takes on the revegetation. That's all we focus on. These two pictures in the slide are from a Federal Highways presentation depicting some of their struggles. The left has severe erosion, and then the right has severe compaction, which precluded plant growth. This map of the United States depicts the three divisions of Federal Highway Administration, and we're specifically involved with Western Federal Lands Highway Division. That region covers Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. And we do have a smaller program based out of Montana in Missoula, but beyond us, I'm not aware of other partnerships that are similar. It's a fairly novel approach, and I think very forward-thinking. Through the support of Western Federal Lands Highway Division, we have been able to influence the use of native seed on construction sites considerably. Federal Highways has what they call the FPs. It's their standard specifications that are national in scope. So any project that is either road or bridge related through Federal Highways has to abide by the FPs. One of the stipulations in there is that if the construction contractor disturbs soil and then doesn't do anything with that area for 14 days, they have to provide some kind of erosion control. In the past, what that has meant is that the construction contractor is responsible to purchase and provide and apply the seed for erosion control, and they call it temporary erosion control. It typically was composed of one or two grass species, more often than not non-native species because they green up quicker. And that temporary erosion control was applied at rates of 80 to 120 pounds per acre. So the past 5 to 10 years, RST has been providing the construction contractor with seed. Western Federal has supported this, and we do it pretty much on all of our projects now, and we call it permanent erosion control. They apply it, the construction contractor applies it, and then when RST is installing the restoration plants, we often do touch-up hydroseeding, so it can be applied twice. It's a mix of grasses and forage species. They're native. Most are perennial. We do include some annuals, and they're seed zone specific. So through that success, we've been able to reduce the application rates from 80 to 120 pounds per acre down to 15 to 40 pounds per acre, and have had great success. Because of that success, we had proof of concept and kind of took it one step further. Federal Highway Administration has a funding program called Federal Lands Access Program, commonly called FLAP. And states and counties can apply to the program for FLAP funding to assist with their projects. And what we had done in the past is collect seed project by project. So we found out about a project, we'd go and collect the plant material before construction started. We'd grow it out or increase the seeds, and then we'd put it back on that specific project. We realized that if we were to do that on a larger scale for the workhorse species, we can utilize economies of scale, we can save a lot of money, and we can have a continual inventory of native seed to use on these flat projects. We know that there's 21 seed zones in Oregon and Washington, and that 98% of the area within those states falls within 13 seed zones. So we made this proposal to Federal Highway and to the decision committees that we do these preemptive seed collections within the seed zones, and then any flat project within that seed zone can utilize that. And both Oregon and Washington approved our proposal unanimously. So the proof of concept is there. There's a big support, and they believe in it so much that they decided to make us a budget line item, and we're now funded off of the top through those committees. These are two examples of trying to smooth engineered features through the use of native plant revegetation. Two different projects. The top one had this new gabion wall installed. At the top of that is a parking lot, and below it is a campground. This is a Bureau of Land Management project, and they were concerned campers would see that wall as enticing to climb, and so it was a safety concern. They wanted us to soften it and kind of make it blend better. There's no soil in that wall, it's just rocks behind the wire mesh. And so we decided to collect native moss from the project area and native ferns. So we had spores for the ferns. We chopped up the moss with machetes and put it in a hydroseeder with water, dried buttermilk, tackifier, the moss, and the fern spores, and then sprayed it onto the face of the wall. You could kind of see a green hue there. On the right, you can see a close-up of some of the original particles of moss we put in there, but you also see new mats or cushions of moss developing. This is an exciting, novel approach that we think is really going to be self-sustaining once it establishes well and the ferns come in. The group of pictures at the bottom is a similar gabion wall. The difference here is that there's soil behind the wire mesh, and in between the wire mesh and the soil is black geotextile that's been impregnated with native seeds. So the first picture is right after construction. That's RST folks installing restoration shrubs. The middle picture is 2 years after that, and that's all native grasses that have come in. And then on the right, that's 4 years after the initial installation, and you see the flowering shrubs, the forbs, the native grasses. It's now 6 years since our initial efforts, and that wall just blends into the environment. You can hardly even notice that it's there. The last example of creatively trying to meet regulatory needs is a project that's in Oregon in the Columbia River Gorge. There's an effort to reconnect segments of a historic highway that was fragmented during the installation of the current interstate that was installed in the 50s. And so it's not in these pictures, but just adjacent to this is a paved, non-motorized pathway for use of bikers and rollers and hikers. And it's 3.5 miles long. The pictures depict a portion of a mitigation site that was intended to mitigate for all effects on the entire 3.5 mile segment. And so that would be, cliff damage, endemic plant habitat, stream buffers, wetlands, wildlife habitat, etc. So instead of just focusing on one potential impact, they wanted to use this 5-acre parcel to mitigate for all impacts. And in the top left, you see big, robust, solid patches of Himalayan blackberry, which is a state-listed noxious weed here. We also had quite a bit of Scotch broom, which is another state-listed noxious weed. And so RST's contractor went in before construction started and used a combination herbicide spray to kill the noxious weeds. It's the bottom left picture. Did this before construction so the construction equipment would not kind of drag those propagules throughout the rest of the project, spreading those noxious weeds. So we killed off the blackberry and then removed all of the dead canes. And once construction was finished, on the right side you see we hydroseeded with native flowering wildflowers that are native to the area with the intention of creating habitat for pollinators. We also installed a lot of large woody debris. We left some ground open for ground nesters, created intentionally cavities in the large wooded debris for nesting, left depressions for water retention, and then utilized a mix of different blooming periods, bloom colors, flower morphology, that sort of thing in the hydroseed mix. This is that same area a year after construction, and you see that it's in full bloom with a variety of native wildflowers. There are also others that haven't set bud yet, so the bloom period starts in early spring, covers all of summer, and goes into late fall to help support those pollinators. So here's what I think it boils down to. I think we can creatively address these regulatory requirements through soft methods. It doesn't have to be engineered hard features on the landscape, especially when we use locally collected, genetically adapted native seeds. It's super successful, and we have proof of concept. And then I also spend a lot of my time encouraging patience on the part of our partners. Consider native perennials, native plants, a capital investment. They're a little slower to come up, but once they do, they're resilient, they're persistent, and they do a great job with help with sedimentation and erosion control. And I really think the future depends on us accentuating the fact that plants don't care about jurisdictional boundaries. It's been really important for us to increase our partnership and diversify our partnership base so that we can work both on and off forest system lands. That's this all lands approach that's going to be really important. And then the large-scale seed collection that I described for workhorse species, I think is really going to be important, not only to have continual inventory, but also to support our private growers that do the seed increase contracts for us. We can utilize economies of scale, and they can put in larger fields, which is a benefit to them. That's it for me. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to send me an email if you have questions or want to discuss anything further. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.